A gute Woche. In general, the Farbrengen today was a brief Farbrengen. By 3 o'clock, Farbrengen was over. The Rebbe spoke several short siches, very short siches. And the Rebbe stressed throughout the entire Farbrengen, in every siche, the Rebbe stressed and he emphasized very strongly the union which the Rebbe has spoken about in the last 2 weeks, what the Medrash tells us, Vayakel Moshe, that Moshe Rabbeinu brought together and he congregated Yidden on Shabbos. And in the times of Moshe, this was a custom, this was a practice which Moshe Rabbeinu himself did it every single Shabbos by bringing together Yidden and teaching them Torah, relating Torah to Yidden. And Rebbe brings the Midrashim that tell us that ever since this was an established practice by Yidden, that on every Shabbos, Yidden would get together, Yidden would gather, come together b'tzibur, come together in a group, besides coming together for davening and for Kriyas HaTorah, which is done every Shabbos, but in addition to that, to come together and learn Torah. To be makil kehilos b'Shabbos, to congregate Yidden on Shabbos, and what should it be for the cause of learning Torah? This is something which the Rebbe has been speaking about the last 2 Shabbosim and today as well, and the Rebbe is urging very, very strongly that this minhag, this custom, should be renewed again, and that Yidden all over should gather on Shabbos, and gather on Shabbos to learn Torah. And naturally, there are various levels of groups of people that come together to learn, from various communities, from various congregations, and so forth. However, there should be, and the Rebbe stressed it very strongly, one inyan in Torah which should be learned equally at all of these shiurim. In other words, all of these shiurim throughout all groups and all communities and all parts of the world should be united by one common inyan which is learned by all of these shiurim. And the most desirable inyan, says the Rebbe, to choose that all these shiurim should be united with is to learn Parshas HaShavua. To learn at least a couple of minutes of the time of the congregating together should be to learn Chumash, to learn Parshas HaShavua. And again, in Chumash there are also various levels. There's the way it is in the simple sense, and taken from Mefarshim, and primarily and most advisable is when the Parshas HaShavua could be learned the way Parshas HaShavua is enlightened with the Hasidic interpretation of Parshas HaShavua. The Rebbe says we see human nature that people usually like to learn an inyan that relates either to the beginning of the Sedra or either to the end of the Sedra. So let it be on such an inyan, on a pasuk, or an inyan which comes at the beginning or at the end of a Sedra. But again, throughout the entire Farbrengen, the Rebbe was stressing this very, very strongly, the importance of seeing to it that on Shabbos we all gather together on Shabbos to be makhil kehilos b'Shabbos, to such an extent that there's even a Sedra on this name, the Sedra of Vayakel Moshe. Moshe congregated Yidden, and that was when on Shabbos. The Rebbe began to Farbrengen that today, besides it being Shabbos, it is also the date of Chav Cheshvan, 20 days in the month of Cheshvan. And 20 days in the month of Cheshvan is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, Friedrich Rebbe's father. Bichlal, we all know what the Yerushalmi tells us, that on a day of birthday, Mazloi Goiver, the mazel of the person whose birthday it is on this day, his mazel gains strength. And how much more so when we're talking about a nasi, that the entire concept of a nasi is that nasi, what's the taich of the word nasi? The taich of the word nasi is that he is elevated. So this corresponds to the concept of the mazel gaining strength. So we're talking about one who is a nasi, and today is the day of his birthday. This nasi has a very strong shaykhus to us, because he was the one who was the Friedrich Rebbe's father. The Rebbe keeps on referring to the Friedrich Rebbe as Nasi Dereinu. And it was during the lifetime of his father, the Friedrich Rebbe was the Menahel Poyel. At that time he was the one who was in charge fully in charge of the Yeshiva Tomchet Mimim. The Yeshiva Tomchet Mimim was founded by the Rebbe Rashab, whose birthday is today, and as he founded the yeshiva, he appointed his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the Frierdiker Rebbe should be the Menahel Poel, the one who should be in charge, had full charge of administering the yeshiva. But after his father passed away, after the Stalkus of the Rebbe Rashab, that is when the Frierdiker Rebbe became the Memale Mekoimai, the one who took the place of his father. And truth is, we have an indication for this in the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe had two names. His first name was Yosef. What's the title Yosef? Yosef means to add, to increase. So what is the pshat? He took over from his father. He was the Memala Mokoim of his father. And together with being Memala Mokoim of his father, he was also Mosef. He was also increasing on top of that. His second name, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was Yitzchok. What does the pasuk say? Why did Sarah name him Yitzchok? Kol Hashemeya Yitzchokli. Anybody that will hear will laugh. So there's the inyan of first hearing, and then this hearing leads to the laughter. So in other words, there is the Kol Hashemeya, and then there is what it leads to. It leads to Yitzchok. So kind of the Rebbe is teaching it the same way. There is the inyanim, what were established by his father, by the Rebbe Rashab, and then we have what was added on by his son, by the Frierdiker Rebbe. And all of this has a shayches to today's Seder. What's today's Seder? Today's Seder begins with Vayera. Vayera Elav Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to Avraham Avinu and revealed himself to him, made himself be seen to Avraham Avinu. And here we all know famous episode of Take, the one whose birthday was today, the Rebbe Rashab, that when the Rebbe Rashab was a child, young child, must have been 5 years old, he couldn't have been older because this happened while his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, was still alive. And Tzemach Tzedek passed away when the Rebbe Rashab was like over 5 years, 5.5 years old. So the Rebbe Rashab once came home from Cheder and he was crying. It was Pashas Vayera and he was crying. So Zayda, the Tzemach Tzedek, asked him, "Tell me, why are you crying?" He said, "I'll tell you why I'm crying. I learned Pashas Vayera. Rebbe in Cheder, the Malamed in Cheder taught us Pashas Vayera. And we learned about that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made himself be seen to Avraham Avinu. So I'm crying, why is it that Avraham Avinu was able to see Hashem and I am not able to see Hashem?" So the Rebbe is bringing out, spoke about it on previous occasions already, based on this story, this expression that every Yid has to have this inner desire, this inner thirst to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebbe says, even though there are those who were Zeiche, that already saw the Eibishter, but nonetheless, this should not satisfy them. They constantly have to request more and more. Here the Rebbe applied the expression of Ad Mosai. In other words, they had it once, they should have it again. If they had it more than that, they should strive for it even yet more. Especially we know regarding Torah. Regarding Torah, our attitude of Yid has to be that B'chol yoim yiyu beinecha kechadoshim. Each time that we learn Torah, we have to view it as it is something new. How does Rashi tell us in Chumash? We should not look at it like it's some sort of an old commandment. We have to look at Torah that it is something new. And mainly the same idea, each time a Yid has the opportunity to go through the Vayera Elav Hashem, he has to take it in a way, something new, and he has to be anxious for it and look forward towards it, because really every Yid has this capability of reaching to this madrege. The Rebbe brought out that Vayera Elav Hashem is 3 words. Vayera, Elav, and Hashem. And we know that the number of 3 is of great significance. There's an expression in the pasuk, Chut HaMeshulash Lo B'Meira Yinotek, that when there's a string which is intertwined 3 times, that will not go apart that fast. Well, we know in halacha, we know that when something is done for 3 times, it creates a concept of a chazakah. So we know how the significance of the Indian of 3 is, and this is reflected here also in the parasha Vayera Elav Hashem, which this Indian of seeing a Kadosh Baruch Hu was brought out in these 3 words of Vayera Elav Hashem. And here we also come to the name of the Baal Hayom Eledes, the one whose birthday it is today. His name was Shalom Dov Ber. What is the Indian of Shalom? What Chazal say, "Im Shalom kan, hakol kan." If there is peace, everything is here. In other words, Shalom has this koyach of uniting, of bringing together one extreme to another extreme, to unite all in Yanim. This is the Indian of Shalom. What is the Indian of Ber? The Gemara discusses, when the Gemara talks about a doiv, the Gemara brings out of this we see in Gashmias, we see in the nature of the animal, we see it in the nature of a beer, that a beer, as the Gemara uses the expression, is misuvel bebasa. The beer is overloaded with flesh, meat. What's the pshat? These names are united. Shalom and Ber, Shalom Dov Ber. Pshat is that this achievement of Shalom, in other words, this bringing together all extremes, is reflected even in Gashmias, even in the Gashmias of Mesuvel Babasa, what we're talking about, like a doiv. So even in such Gashmias also becomes permeated totally with Kedusha. And this also leads us into the end of today's Seder. End of today's Seder, first we talk about the Akedah, and then the Torah talks about Macho. The birth of Macho, which is mentioned at the end of this week's Seder. It says it's brought in Svarim that what does Macho abbreviate? Mem Ayin Chof Hei. Macho abbreviates Melech al Kol Ha'aretz. In other words, the same concept, to introduce the Reibishter as the ganze Welt, all of Gashmias should become durchenem, should become permeated with Elokus. That's the Indian of Macho. This is also reflected in this week's Seder. And then we come to the beginning of next week's Seder. Beginning of next week's Seder begins with Chazarah. What does Rashi comment on Chazarah? Sarah lived 127 years. So Rashi tells us, Kulan Shavin Latayva, they were all equal to good. Here the Rebbe refers to an Indian which is explained in Chassidus at length. Meya Shana, Eschem Shana, and Sheva Shana, 127 years. So Chassidus explains that, in other words, we're talking about 3 different types of inyanim. Meya is in hundreds, Eschem is in 20s, and Sheva is when we're talking in singular numbers. In other words, as it's explained in Chassidus, based on how it's explained in Kabbalah, it's talking about 3 different levels. And what do we say? Kulan Shavin L'Toiva. All of these years were equally to good. In other words, what's the Tarich? We are bringing together all of these different levels, the level of hundreds to tens to singular, and all of these, same concept which we're talking about, the same idea, just like Shalom. That it was to bring together all different levels, and in all different levels should be permeated with what? With Kedusha, especially this year. That this is a special year. It's the year of Shnas Nisim. Tavshinun, Tehei Shnas Nisim, as the Rebbe keeps on emphasizing this at every occasion, how this year is a special year. So Mamela, this year, our Avodas Hashem has to be in response to Tavshinun, Nisim. What's the meaning of a nes? As the Rebbe has already stressed at various occasions, what's the taich of a nes, besides it meaning a miracle? Chassidus brings out, based on it, we find this expression in the Pasuk, Orim Nisi al HaHorim. Nes means uplifting. This year, the Rebbe keeps on stressing, Mamish at every occasion, this is a year that our Avodas Hashem has to be done in an uplifted way, in an uplifted fashion. And that's the idea, that how these Eiros were vital in all previous years, how much more so is it this year, that we are in the year of Shnas Nisim. Here the Rebbe is continuing again. We mentioned earlier about the importance of being makil kehilos b'Shabbos. And here in Pashas Vayera, right at the beginning, Rashi tells us that the Rebbe came to see Avraham Avinu. And for what reason did he come to see him? So Rashi quotes on behalf of Chazal. Rashi tells us who is the Tana that says this. Because as we know, the Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos that when something is repeated in the name of its Sayer, maybe Geula brings a redemption to the world. And Mela, this is something which brings Geula into the world. I don't know if the Rebbe mentioned it here or later, but this is what we're all aiming for, that we should go out of Golus and come into Geula. The difference between Golus and Geula is only one word, the Aleph. Geula has an Aleph and Golus doesn't. So when we are successful in bringing in the Aleph into the world, what is the Aleph? Aleph Shalaylam, the Eibishter. Corresponds to the same idea as we spoke earlier in the first Sikha. When we are successful in bringing the Aleph into the Aleph Shalaylam, the Rebbeinu Shalaylam, the Aleph, the one and only, into the world, then it no longer is Golus, and then we will come to the level of Geula. But regardless, Rashi says that on behalf of Chazal, that Vayera Elav Hashem, that the Rebbe came to visit the sick. What's the pshat? The Rebbe came to visit Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was on the level of a chayla. First he was on the level of a chayla. The numeric value of the word chayla is 49. Chayla is begematria memtes. Avraham Avinu here, Rebbe came lerapis es hachayla, to cure the chayla, that he's no longer a chayla. What's the pshat? He's no longer a chayla, that he's reaching to the level of the Sha'ar Nun. We'll know the Chazal tell us, Chamishim Sha'ar Bina Nivra Ba'olam, there were 50 gates of Bina created, 49 were given into this world, the 50th was not. Same in Chassidus explains regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was, burial of Moshe Rabbeinu was in Har Nevoi, Mount Nevoi. What's Har Nevoi? Chassidus teaches Nun Boi. That is when Moshe Rabbeinu reached the level of the 50th Sha'ar, the Sha'ar Nun of the Chamishim Sha'ar Bina. Same Rebbe is saying when we're talking here by Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu here until now, he was a chayla. However, going through the inyan of Milah, and now he's b'shlishi l'milah, so he's in the third day of his Milah, when the inyan of Milah takes the strongest effect on him, and to the extent of tzar, that he's feeling it the strongest. So now the Rebbe is coming to cure him. What's the pshat? The Rebbe is coming to cure him. Here, Avraham Avinu reached the level of his halach lefonai v'heyei tomim. Chazal tell us, as long as Avraham Avinu was lacking the mitzvah of Milah, he was an orel. And being an orel, he wasn't whole and complete. When did he become an orel? When did he become ganz and complete? This happened when he fulfilled, committed the mitzvah of Milah. So Mamela now, Avraham Avinu is reaching the level of shleimus. He's reaching the level of his halech lefonai v'heyei somim. So he's no longer a chayla. Now he's coming to the madrege that he's reached the Sha'ar Nun. He's already a sholem. He's ganz because he has the 50th Sha'ar as well. And the Rebbe referred how much the mitzvah of Milah had an effect on Avraham Avinu. So actually, we spoke about it in previous occasions as well. There's a very strong question which all Svarim ask. Chazal tell us that Kayim Avraham Avinu and all the others, they fulfilled the entire Torah, actually Nitna, everything. Afilu Erev Tafshilin, they did all of the mitzvahs, they did everything. So the question arises, if Avraham Avinu was Mekayim all the mitzvahs, why did he wait till age of 99 to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Milah once the Rebbe told him to do that? Why didn't he do it before that? Just like all other mitzvahs he did, why didn't he do the mitzvah of Milah? So as it's explained in the Chassidus at length, what is the difference between mitzvahs before Matan Torah and mitzvahs after Matan Torah? So Chassidus brings out that mitzvahs which the Ovis did, or the Shvatim, which were done before Matan Torah, were not that powerful that they were able to affect the Gashmias, the Geshem of the thing that the mitzvah is done with, and that it should instill a sanctity in Kedusha, a Kedusha into the Gashmias. Das hat es nicht getan. It wasn't able to accomplish that. And as Chassidus explains at length why, because the mitzvahs which the Ovis or the Shvatim did was only able to reach to the level of their neshama, not higher. So Mamela it wasn't able to accomplish that. Now that we are committing mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs are reaching not only to the source of our neshama, the mitzvahs are reaching from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the mitzvah mitzvah maloshen tzavsu v'chibur. We are totally united with the Eibishter. That's the idea of a mitzvah. Mitzvah attaches a yid with the Eibishter. So Mamela, the mitzvah is so powerful today that it can affect a gashmius, a dover gashmi, and that the dover gashmi zilven heilig should simply become kedusha like we find today. There are gashmistic things. There's film, there's a sefer Torah, countless gashmistic things, and these gashmistic things have a kedusha. We're supposed to treat them special. We can take care of it in a special way. Why? Else because this is his halik. There is a halikite in it. There is a kedusha in it, and that is why we have to treat it different. Avraham Avinu wanted that at least one mitzvah should be by him the way mitzvahs are after Matan Torah, and this was the mitzvah of Milah. And that is why he waited all these years until the Rebbe told him. And once the Rebbe told him, he became a mitzvah va'oisa, which means he did it as he was commanded to do so. And when he did it as commanded to do so, it had the same power that mitzvahs have after Matan Torah. With this, the Rebbe continues, refer to it today briefly as well. We can understand why when Avram took Eliezer, and he sent him to find the shidduch for Yitzchak, and he put him under oath to find the shidduch. Avram told Eliezer, "Simno yotcha tachas yireichi." Actually, it does not agree with the klolim of tznius. Told him that he should put his hand tachas yireichi where his milah was. And this is an expression which he used before the shvuah, before he put him under oath. We know Chazal tell us how careful person should be where he puts his hands, and how Tanoim expressed himself, how careful they were as far as their behavior in tznius. And here Avraham Avinu is telling Eliezer, Simna yotra tachas yireichi. However, there's a halacha. The halacha is that when a person is put under oath, it's done with a dvar mitzvah. That's where we know there's an expression by people, he'll swear over a sefer Torah. What does it mean he swears over a sefer Torah? Because shvuah is done over a dova gashmi that has a kedusha. At the time of Avraham Avinu, there was no other gashmiistic thing which carried, the status of having a kedusha, only by saying Simna yotcha tachas yireichi. Because the concept of that gashmi should be heilik, this did not exist until after Matan Torah. Except for this one and only thing by Avraham, where he was a mitzvah v'oisa on this mitzvah. And as the Rebbe continued, getting back to the importance and to the significance of gathering on Shabbos, congregating on Shabbos, the Rebbe referred that there is a famous maimah which was said by the Baal Hayom Eledes, by the Rebbe Rashab, whose birthday is today, the maimah of Heicholzu. And in this maimah of Heicholzu, he emphasizes the importance of and the effect of inyanim when these inyanim are done b'tzibur, when these inyanim are done in public. So Mamela, getting back to the Indian of being a makil kehilos b'Shabbos, how important, how much more effective the learning and all the good resolutions which are accepted at this learning, how effective all of this is when it is done in public, when it is done in tzibur. The Rebbe continued, raising another question in the Sedren, the Parsha of Vayera. We were just discussing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to visit Avraham Avinu, who was a chayla at that time. Why was he a chayla? Because of his bris, because of them being circumcised. Chazal tell us, we say every day in davening, v'chorois imoy habris. He cut with him the bris. Was meint us? That it refers that when Avram was zichmal, the Rebishter helped him on the cutting. V'chorois imoy habris. In other words, the Rebishter was a partner with him in the mitzvah of Mil, when he performed it on himself. And Avram obviously was well aware of that. So how can we say that when Avram is reaching to such a level of shleimus, as we just discussed, he's becoming a tamim, as the pasuk itself says, the Rebishter is telling him, is halech lefonai, go before me, v'hayei tamim, dev'sayna gansel, you will be whole and complete. How is all this happening? By him going through the mitzvahs milah. So how can we say that Avram had tzar? What's the pshat when a person is sick? When a person is sick, it means that he's feeling bad, and that is why there is need for somebody to come and visit him to alleviate the pain that he has. However, when a person is going through something which may even be painful, but when the joy that's in it, the joy that's behind it, the tainug that's in it, should supersede the tzar, and Avram realizing to what level he's reaching by the fact that he's going through the mitzvah of Milah, how come that Avram was in a matzav of tzar that the Rebbe should come and visit him levakeres hachoila? The whole halacha of bika cholim we learn from here, from the act of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bika cholim is the taich when somebody doesn't feel well, and he has tzar, somebody comes to visit him. Wie kommt? How does it come that Avram here should have tzar? I'll compare it. There's a halacha that if a person has a dream, a dream which an undesirable dream, and he wants to fast because of this dream, the halacha says that he's allowed to fast even on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we are not allowed to fast under normal circumstances. And on Shabbos, we are obligated to enjoy the Shabbos in the most festive way possible with a proper Shabbos meal. So we say, because for this person, this is his tainuk, this is his enjoyment. He's so disturbed about the dream that he's looking for, he's eager, in need of this fast, of this tainus. So Mamela so we allow him to do it. Why? Because for him it's a tainuk. Furthermore, says the Rebbe, a person that would go through a certain, the Rebbe used the expression, a tipul refu'i. He's going through some medical treatment, but why is he going through this medical treatment? So that this will improve his health. So are we going to say that the person has tzar, is disturbed, has akbas nefesh, because of he's going through this tipul, this treatment? On the contrary, this treatment is leading to something which will help his health be better. So Mamela, getting back to Avraham Avinu, the Rebbe is asking, why was Avram in the status of a chayla, that he had tzar, and the Rebbe had to come to visit him? Avram should have been happy, should have been satisfied of the great tainug, of the great pleasure that he's reaching to such high level. And Mamela, when a person is in a mood of tainug, there's no need to come and visit him. There's no need to come and visit him al Slovakia Rasachayla. The Rebbe left this as a question. So there's the expression by the Rebbe when he leaves questions and answers, Tein lechacham v'yech kamoid. Leave it up to the wise, and they will become yet wiser by looking into this inyan and looking and searching it for a teretz. And again, the Rebbe kept on stressing on the importance of everybody utilizing their influence on the entire environment, just like we find by Avram Avinu. Avram utilizes influence on Elene Mamre, even though prior to Avram they were very far from having a shaykhus to the inyan of Avram, and the same thing each and every one of us should become a balabos on the entire environment by utilizing our hashpah on the entire environment, and again stressing the importance of being makil kehilos b'Shabbos, making sure that Yidden congregate and gather on Shabbos, the most appropriate thing to learn an inyan that has a shaykhus to Pashas HaShavua.